All right, we are live. So, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us again live, or if you're watching this after the fact, not live. I'm Beverly. I'm working here with Passport Game Studios, and today I am talking to Andrei Novac of NSKN Games. So, he's down there in the thing. You can see him right now. Andrei's
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, Andrei's super cool. I've had a chance to talk to him a lot over the last few months and never actually got to see him talking with his face. And this is really cool. Andrei is going to be at our booth at Gen Con. That's booth 1753. And he's going to be there and he's going to be playing his newest game, which is Exodus, Edge of Extinction, which is the expansion for Exodus Proxima Centauri. So if you know about those games that we already published with Passport, you're going to be able to check out the expansion. And you're also going to get to check out one of his newest titles, Mistfall, that we just learned we're going to have a few copies of at Gen Con, so we can check it out there. So, all right, I'm going to, even though I just talked a lot about you, Andrei, I'm going to say, hello, Andrei, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hello again. So, a little bit about myself. Well, first of all, I am a designer for NSKN Games. This is what I've been doing for the past almost 5 years. Exodus Edge of Extinction would be my 7th title. Maybe somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but this is according to my count. This should be my 7th title. It's also my first big expansion. Before getting into board games, I've been an engineer. I studied computer science, but I've been working in various industries, including but not limited to oil and gas and constructions. And over the years, I was passionate about board games, and there came a moment when I decided, why don't I do just that for a while? And, well, the hobby turned into a business, and here we are today.
That's honestly really amazing. I love that you're like, I guess I'm just going to focus on board games for a while. I've done pretty much everything else. Like, I guess I'll do this. And now 7 games later, you're still doing it. That's so awesome.
Well, I'm still pretty far from your other attendee at Gen Con. I'm talking about Bruno Faiduti. I mean, he's a really experienced board game designer. So I'm like 25 years behind that. So.
Well, whenever you see him at Gen Con, are you going to like fanboy? Are you going to be like, Bruno, you're the greatest?
Well, probably.
I think we're all going to be like that. Whenever I had the chance to talk to him last week, I was just like, oh, it's so cool. Of course, I tried to just be like, so Bruno, tell me about your game, but I feel the same way.
Of course.
Yeah, so I want to hear all about Exodus, Edge of Extinction, but I guess we should probably back up a little bit and talk about the base game for people that don't know much about it already. So can you tell us a little bit about Exodus Proxima Centauri, and then a little bit about what the expansion's about?
Okay, so the base game first, right? It has a pretty interesting story because when we started NSKN Games, we had one game which, the whole company, everyone revolved around warriors and traders. This was back in 2011. And at the same time, I was secretly working on this project, which didn't have a name, was called just Project 7. Don't ask about why 7. It was not our 7th project. At some point, I just presented the game to my colleagues, my teammates, and they're like, oh, this is really interesting. It's been one of my dreams, I guess, to build something which is, let's say, something like Twilight Imperium, but quicker, more streamlined, Twilight Imperium Light, as many people like to call it. So this is how it all started, and in 2012 we actually published Exodus Proxima Centauri, the first edition. 1 year later we made a revised edition where we managed to pack everything in a smaller box, so the game looks like a normal ticket ride size box, but there is a lot of stuff inside, spaceships and many punch boards and everything. And there was one thing which was missing from the base game. Not really missing, but we left it out on purpose because the game was heavy enough as it was. Basically, all the 6 factions in Exodus Proxima Centauri are the same. Everybody starts with the same resources, with the same possible technology tree, with the same spaceships. The game is completely symmetrical. The asymmetry comes only from the decisions players make and the whole hex map, which is set up in a non-symmetrical way. But basically, the base game put 6 players or up to 6 players against each other in this epic empire builder and heavily oriented on combat with the same abilities. Now, what people really wanted was to have asymmetric factions. So about the time when we published Exodus Proxima Centauri, we started the revised edition. I'm talking about the revised edition. We started working on this massive expansion, which was supposed to be pretty small in the beginning, just give each faction one special ability and, this is it. And then we decided to make a tech tree for each one of them, and then, all kinds of special abilities. So 2 years later, we actually managed to finish this expansion. Spent another 4 months to develop the graphics, and then last February we went to Kickstarter, and basically this is the outcome. I'm gonna just show you quickly the game a little bit.
Nice. Yeah. That looks awesome.
So Edge of Extinction is kind of let's say a child of ours, together with the whole community of people, a bunch of people who were all the time nagging us like, hey, what about the expansion? What about the asymmetric factions in Exodus? So we went on and we did it. And this is the project which took us, honestly, the longest. It's been more than 2 years of development, design and development. And everybody's asking, oh, why so long? Because the base game, which is more complex, took less time. And the answer I always give people is one and the same. It takes a lot of time to balance out asymmetric gameplay. I mean, you can't use the mathematical and even the programming tools as you can use with a normal game, with a symmetrical game. And with so much asymmetry and so many possible decisions, it's very, very difficult to balance. And we want the game which is not perfectly balanced, because I'm not sure this is always possible. And it all depends on how players play the game. But we wanted to make sure that at least people start with roughly the same chances, playing any of the 6 factions against any of the other ones. That's the 2 years development period for the game.
That's amazing. I love how you're like, well, this is kind of our answer to the people that were nagging us to have asymmetric factions. Like, if someone nags me, I kind of am like, yeah, okay. But on your side, you're like, yeah, okay. And then you spend 2 years developing this like awesome expansion. You're like, here you go. What do you think about this, huh? Look at this awesome expansion that I made for you. That's just amazing.
No, thank you. Honestly, we've done it maybe equally for ourselves, because we were also, we had this idea in mind from the very beginning. We knew that we wanted to develop this game into a fully developed space empire builder. We just decided to do it step by step.
Yeah, it's such a good game. In fact, what's funny with the base game, I was telling you before we went live today, and I'll tell everyone else, the base game, I brought it to the Tabletop Day event at Geek and Sundry this year, and there was someone there that was just so into it that at the end of the day, I ended up giving it to them, and they were like, oh, it's like Christmas, I'm so excited. So I cannot wait for people to be able to get their hands on the expansion at Gen Con, because it's going to be really cool. So speaking of that, you're going to be at Gen Con. You're actually going to be demoing the game at Gen Con. So people can just come by our booth, 1753, sit down, like learn the game, talk to you, which is amazing. So what are you really looking forward to about Gen Con?
Wow, it's like everything. It's it's our first time and my first time in Gen Con. So from NSKN Games, it will be myself and Agnieszka, who is also my co-designer for Exodus Proxima Centauri, and we're both kind of hyper excited to be there, because it's like the biggest gaming event in US, and we haven't been to any gaming event in the US before, and everybody kept telling us how awesome Gen Con is, and it's like, okay, this is the year when we can actually be there. And we're very happy to be in the Passport booth, and there will be many copies of Exodus Edge of Extinction and Exodus Proxima Centauri, and we'll be there to demo and explain every single aspect of the game, because we were supposed to know it.
Right. So, I can't really think of a better way to learn this game than from the designers. And the other thing that's so cool about it is that because it is such a complex game, I'm really looking forward to sort of learning it from you two. And I'm just really excited to actually be able to meet in person. So, yeah, and everyone else will be able to meet you in person too, which is going to be just awesome. So, Yeah, since this is your first time at Gen Con, other than, of course, demoing your game and hanging out in the Passport booth, I mean, I'm sure there's other stuff you want to do. So is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to checking out while you're in Indianapolis?
Well, I'm not really sure if we'll have enough time because I personally would like to see like at least half, maybe two-thirds, maybe all of it, like all the publishers, everyone at Gen Con. I know there will be many people who we've met before by some kind of online conversation, some Skype meeting, some Hangout, and we would like to meet all those people in person. We cannot wait to meet all these all the amazing people who we actually know their names from Board Game Geek, or they've been reaching out to us one way or another, and of course all the people from Passport, and we also have to adjust to the time difference, so we'll be quite busy. Plus, I'm very curious of some new games. Especially, I'm going to say Warehouse 51 because I've heard all the good things about it. So
that's cool. Are there any other? It's okay if they're not our titles. I won't tell anyone, although this is going to be on the internet for everyone to see. But are there any other games that you're really looking forward to sort of checking out while you're there?
Well, I'm not sure if it will be there, but there is this Magic the Gathering, the board game, which I'm very interested in, being a 15-year-old. I mean, being a fan of Magic the Gathering for the past 15 years, I'm obviously very curious. There are, of course, some new titles from Fantasy Flight, which everybody's interested in.
Definitely.
Forbidden Stars. And there is actually there are some games I actually got a chance to see. It's also some other of your partners. I'm talking about Ludi Creations. So they also have some pretty cool titles like Pocket Imperium, which is a cute little game.
Yeah, definitely. And that'll be at the show too.
There will be many interesting things. And I'm just curious to have a feeling of how this convention looks like, because it's supposed to be like the Essen of North America, but with more people, more focused on gaming and less on sales and business meetings and everything. So
yeah, you're going to love it. It's one of those things where it's like you can't turn a corner without running into people playing games. I mean, I remember last time I was there, it was like I'd go back to my hotel room to get something in the middle of the day. And then, in the hotel lobby, there are people playing games. In the hallway, there's people playing games. I could every room I walked by, there were people playing games. It's kind of cool in the sense that it seems like no one ever sleeps at this show. It doesn't matter what time you go out, day or night. There will be people out playing some, just outrageous game and having the best time. And that's what I think is probably the coolest thing about it, is that everyone is really there because they love gaming. There's not really any weird posturing. It's not, a huge thing like Comic-Con. It really feels like a community event. So you're gonna love it. So
yeah, cannot wait.
Yeah. Now I have a couple of your other games too. Of course, I just have them sitting nearby. They're super heavy. Of course, Versai, and I also have Progress, which both of these games Passport publishes as well. And what's kind of cool, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, is that a lot of your games you've actually kickstarted, which I think is actually really inspirational. We get questions all the time about how that process works and how it works for the designers. So I thought I would ask you a little bit about how you've really found that process and why you keep going back to it, because it seems like you're doing really well with it.
Well, we thought about Kickstarter, I think, in our second year of board game publishing, but since we're from Romania and back then we didn't know about Passport, I think I knew Rob back then, but that was pretty much it. And we thought about a way to get to Kickstarter, so in all honesty, it was more of a business decision, trying to get our game to as many people as possible. Kickstarter helps us make a lot better quality games than we can make without Kickstarter, because people finance our project, and with their support we can add a lot more content. This is what happened, for example, with Edge of Extinction, and some of this content was Kickstarter limited. That means, well, it's not exclusive, but it's available for an extra cost or in conventions, and there will be some of this special items in Gen Con, but it also added a lot more meat on the bone in the base game, in the retail box. And we started with Kickstarter in 2014, so basically a bit more than a year ago. But we started preparing about 1.5 years before that by researching hundreds of projects, trying to see what people are doing right, what people are doing, well, suboptimal, and try to learn from other people's experiences. Making a Kickstarter project is not as easy as some people may think, and also as easy as we thought in the very beginning. It's a whole half-a-year process when you gather all the information. You have to have lots of the graphics prepared. You have to be prepared to answer every single question people may have. And sometimes there are 100 and 200 of these kind of questions every day, and you have to be ready to have the time to answer all these questions and to make sure that people know and understand very well what they're pledging for.
Yeah, so I think that, like, I mean, your success in there is really something I think if other designers are kind of in the same boat, really something that they should look at, because like you said, you did all that research and it's really, really done well for you guys. And I love the idea of using it as a platform to sort of get out to new people that maybe you wouldn't be able to reach otherwise. So that's just really cool. So the other thing is I just realized we have some questions coming in from Google+, which is awesome. So the first one that I have is from Rainer. Sorry, Rainer, you asked this 11 minutes ago, but I'm going to do it right now. And that is, can you briefly tell us what your favorite faction is in Edge of Extinction and why? So what is your favorite faction?
Well, I'm going to say my favorite faction is the Serious Theocracy.
And why is that?
Well, it's the faction which controls or aims to control most of the meta game, which is the part I like the most. And I need to explain this a little bit. In Exodus Proxima Centauri, as well as in Edge of Extinction, everything is pretty much out in the open. I mean, there is simultaneous action selection and ship movement and all of this, but everything is out in the open. And there are no alliances. However, people tend to make some kind of deals outside the game, and the political aspect is enhanced a lot in Exodus Edge of Extinction compared to Exodus Proxima Centauri, because the political decisions people vote on every turn, even though there are not many, they can make a pretty big difference for the gameplay, especially that the political decision may influence a lot what you can or cannot do throughout the rest of the turn or throughout the rest of the game. And Serious Theocracy is the faction which benefits most of playing correctly this meta game and getting the correct political decision in play, and that means influencing also other players around the table to vote for something which may or may not in the end help them as well and as much.
Cool. That sounds awesome. I cannot wait to see this in person. So thanks for the question, Rainer. Oh, he also added to say, do you have any more information about the Board Game Companion app planned for iOS in September? So do you?
Well, this is made with an American company which reached out to us. They are big fans of the game, and we are trying to help them as much as we can. The whole programming is not done by us, it's done by them. We are just providing the graphics and any kind of support we can. So I am hoping that everything will go fine. So far I have no reason to doubt that. And we are basically as curious as possible to see how this will look like. We have just a very slight idea, and we're hoping to see a prototype, well, a little bit before the rest of the people, but we're hoping that this will happen in September, and people will be able to use this to make their gameplay slightly easier, more comfortable, and more interesting.
Cool. So that actually brings me a little bit back to something you had mentioned really early on, which is that you kind of, before you got into sort of the physical sort of gaming, you were into like computer programming and stuff like that. So I was kind of curious, you know, what was it that led you away from, let's say, designing video games and into designing like actual physical tabletop games?
Well, I think it's convergence of factors. First of all, the moment I started playing board games, I realized how much cooler they are from my personal perspective, because I don't get to play them alone. I get to play them with people. When I started playing video games, which is when I had my first computer, maybe like 20-something years ago, it was a different story. There was not so much internet, especially in Eastern Europe, and most of the games were standalone, play on your own PC at home, in your room, sometimes trying to sneak away from your parents who have other ideas for you when you're growing up as a child. Well, board games are a complete social experience. I mean, you play with people, you compete with people, you are cooperating to defeat some kind of vile enemy or the game or whatnot, but it's with people. It's the social interaction which is the most interesting part. And this is the first thing. The second thing is that designing board games was more interesting for me because with computer games, you have a much wider design space. I mean, if you think about some classics like Diablo, for example, I mean, you have basically an unlimited option to create monsters, to create heroes, but a board game has to fit inside a physical box. Everything has to be in a confined space, and it has to be just as interesting because otherwise people won't play it. So the challenge, I found it to be much greater. And I could design and then test with my friends and spend some quality time together.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I totally see what you're saying. And what also is funny is I think every kid that had a computer has gone through that same thing. Like, why don't our parents trust us? We're just playing video games. But yeah, so what's really cool is, I'm going to hold up your progress. I remember when this game was being released, I asked you and Agnieszka about some of your inspirations for it. And of course, Exodus, Proxima Centauri, your own game, was one of them. But another one was Civilization, which is a computer game. So I love how you've been able to sort of take the best elements of video games and really be able to include them, like you said, in a box. And it's really impressive considering just how much you can do with computers and how you have to really distill the essence of that into something that you can publish and feel in your hands. So really kudos. I think that's just really cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we have a few more minutes here. And I guess some of the other stuff that I'd like to talk about is we get these questions a lot, and I think it's good to be able to actually ask a designer about it, which is that if someone wants to get started designing tabletop games, how would you really recommend them getting started in the designing process? What would you recommend to get started?
Well, first of all, play a lot of board games. Play all the classics. I mean, I think every single board game player out there, people who have gone past playing one single game throughout their whole life, has heard or has played the game by Rainer Knizia, for example. If you follow his designs, you can see very solid mathematical models behind that. That's another thing to look at. The same I can say about another big name, Uwe Rosenberg. He's been my inspiration, at least for my earliest designs, because I can see how the whole game of Agricola is built around the mathematical model. And this is something which has been a passion of mine. So having a good model is always something to consider.
So it's a good idea also to have a strong math background, it sounds like, to really kind of get the hang of what you're trying to build.
It really helps. It really helps. But or for example, and I'm gonna anticipate here a little bit and talk about Mistfall. Mistfall is made by a designer who is also a very good friend of ours, and now he's working full time with NSKN Games. His name is Błażej Kubacki. He came to us basically with the design of a cooperative game. It's something which we're looking for. He's also a first-time designer, and he's not a mathematician or an engineer. And still he managed to make a game which is extremely solid. It's one of the most solid adventure games I've ever seen in my life, and this is also one of the reasons we decided to publish it, because the game is simply awesome. Besides the fact that it has an immersive universe, and the first time I read the story of this universe, I was like, wow, I really want to read further. I mean, I really want to read more. This has been the same reaction people had on Kickstarter. I'm always looking at the mathematical model of the game, and this has been really well thought through. the cards, the interaction between cards. I mean, everything is so well balanced. The monsters are tough to beat, but not impossible. The hero's abilities are powerful, but never overpowered. There is always this feeling that you're on the edge between winning a battle or losing a battle.
That's awesome. And yeah, I'm actually glad you brought Mistfall back up, because we are going to have, at least as I said earlier, some copies at the booth. So if people want to come by at Gen Con and sort of get a feel for it, we're going to have some there. So booth 1753, don't forget. So let's talk a little bit more about Mistfall, because it's not ready for sale yet, but we're looking at it pretty soon. So what can you tell us a little bit about Mistfall right now?
Well, right now, the deliveries for the Kickstarter copies are happening in Europe, and immediately after Gen Con, this will happen also in the US and Canada, and then Australia. And I'm guessing the game will reach retail sometime in the autumn. It's a fully cooperative adventure game for 1 to 4 players. It has, and this is also something which happened because of Kickstarter, since we were speaking about it earlier. There were originally 4 heroes in the game box. Now there are 7 heroes in the game box, all of them fully playable in the retail edition, which is awesome. Each hero has a full deck of special abilities. It's a normal box, like a Ticket to Ride size box, full of cards and punch boards and locations and everything. It's a game which can be played from 1 to 4 players. It's very difficult as a solo experience, which makes it that more challenging, and there are already many people reporting on Board Game Geek about all kinds of tricky and interesting stuff they managed to do with playing with 1 player, with 2 players, or up to 4 players. The game is not very short, but not very long. One scenario takes about between 60 and 120 minutes, depending on your experience, and also how difficult a scenario is. Some of them are really difficult, some of them are, let's say, medium to light, but still expect a fairly difficult adventure game.
Yeah, sorry, keep going, because I love hearing about this game, and so does everyone else, so keep going.
It's our first, Edge of Extinction is an expansion, so it's our first game, like standalone game box published in 2015, not the last one though. And it's the project which we put a lot of effort into, because it had, for example, more than 100 unique illustrations. So you can imagine it took quite a while to finalize all of them. We put a lot of attention to details. We worked with an amazing artist who has done the whole graphics of the game from A to Z. So I think it's the first time when you have one illustrator who also took care of the graphic design and managed to get everything done properly. And everything done to a level of quality which we can really say we're completely proud of. Everything coming from one person. We're also very proud of our previous games, but this one, kind of, the artwork stands out because it was difficult to get this feeling of this fantasy universe which the designer managed to think of, and it's a rich universe. To get everything down in these 100 images, so that people have the idea which we had in mind when we decided to design and publish the game.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful, the images that I've seen so far, and I can't wait to actually get my hands on it at Gen Con. So I know that at Passport, we're just really, really excited to be publishing this with you guys, and we're also excited. I think our launch timeline is looking like October. So hopefully, as soon as October, everyone that's watching this will be able to pick up Mistfall in stores, which is just going to be awesome. So keep that in mind. But of course, you can always get a chance to play it at Gen Con ahead of time. So this has been so cool. We only really have about a minute left. So I guess before we go, is there anything that you want people watching this to know about any of your games, about NSKN, about Gen Con, anything?
Well, I think all I can tell people is that we're preparing a new title called Simurg. It's going to be a fantasy Euro game this time. Worker placement, board building, and I'm not going to say more right now. But right after Gen Con, we will start releasing information, and the game will again be carried by Passport Games, and it will reach, hopefully, North America in the autumn, like this time late autumn. And I cannot wait to see as many of you as possible in Gen Con.
That's so awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. And yeah, so thanks everyone for tuning in today. And if you're going to be at the show next week, I will see you there. And if not, well, thanks for watching. That's it for us. Talk to you later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.